In a town called Ogundu in Igboland, Nigeria, preparations for a traditional wedding was taking place in the compound of Matsin Debizi Ofola. Everyone was happy and cheerful as each person handled one task or the other. The wedding would take place the next day, so they were working on a tight schedule, doing their utmost to tackle whatever issue may be on ground. Matsin Debizi's wife, Teresa, was coordinating everything about the different dishes. The caterer she hired had already arrived and was preparing with her team to start her work. Matsin Debizi had slaughtered a cow for the wedding. Who was the bride? Matsin Debizi's first daughter, Oluchi, was the bride. At 27 years, she had found her heartthrob in the person of one Kingsley Obaji. Oluchi's parents and her fiancé, Kingsley, had mapped out enough money to take care of all expenses. Oluchi's 3 sisters and brother, Chimazi, were also back home in the village for the wedding. Each of them had a task they were overseeing. Friends and well-wishers came into the compound to extend their goodwill. Suddenly, there was an uproar of joy as a black jeep drove into the compound. Ndebizi's household laughed and danced with joy as Okechukwu, Ndebizi's younger brother, alighted from the jeep with his wife and baby. They were coming home from the US and their driver had just driven them home to his brother's house. "Welcome, Okechukwu, my brother," Ndebizi exclaimed with joy. Both brothers hugged happily. "Thank you, Dede, thank you," Okechukwu responded warmly. A flurry of more greetings ensued and Okechukwu and his wife were ushered into the neat, well-furnished duplex in the compound. Oluchi and her siblings took their turns to carry their little cousin, Cherry, just 6 months old. She was a pretty baby with chubby cheeks. By evening, the first set of dishes for family consumption were ready, so anyone hungry had more than enough food to eat. From time to time, Oluchi's phone rang and she answered the call, giving her friends directions to her house in the village for the wedding ceremony. Her eyes were filled with light as everything was going as planned. She checked the time on her wristwatch. It was few minutes past 6 o'clock in the evening. By this time tomorrow, we would be done with the traditional wedding, she said to herself, smiling. But there was another arm of the Ofola family that was not sharing in the joy of the moment. This was the Amanze family. Amanze and Ndebizi were half-brothers. Amanze's mother was the first wife of their father, Ichi Yuzokwi, and Ndebizi's mother was the second wife. Amanze lived in a small piece of land across from Ndebizi's house. His bungalow wasn't a posh house. It was clear that Ndebizi was doing better financially. That evening, Amanze and his mother, a 78-year-old woman, sat at the balcony of their house, their faces betrayed no emotions. "It's like Okechukwu and his wife have arrived, Uzunma," Amanze's mother said matter-of-factly. Amanze nodded. "Yes, not too long ago. Let them rejoice. We shall see in the end." Uzunma nodded, her head full of gray hair, her mouth grinding coconut systematically. "Yes, let them laugh and make merry. They will have enough time for tears." Her voice was tinged heavily with malice. Amanze and Ndebizi had been at loggerheads for several years. What was the problem? Land. In Igboland, it is generally believed that the first son of the family inherits the family compound among any other property the father may leave behind. The rest of the brothers would have to share other lands and property outside the family compound. This tradition is not always kept. In some cases, the first son of the family may make money and buy land elsewhere, allowing his brothers to occupy the family compound as they wish. While in some cases, the younger brothers would leave the family compound to establish theirs elsewhere in the clan. In some other cases, selfish first sons had ordered all other brothers and their families to vacate the family compound whether it was convenient or not. This has often created serious problems in several Igbo families. In the case of Amanze and his half-brothers, their father, Ichi Yuzokwi, had given them a condition to inherit the family compound, which had a large expanse of land. Ichi Yuzokwi had told them years ago when he was still alive, whoever among you that is ready to build a duplex will inherit the family's biggest land, which is the compound we're living in. Every other person will relocate to our other lands." This statement from their father had shocked Amanze. "But Papa, I am the first son, why do you give this condition? You know very well that I should inherit the compound as your first son," Amanze had told him. Ichi Yuzokwi had shaken his head and given a croaky laughter. "All of you are my sons. But this is how I want to do my thing. I stand by it. Any of you who is ready first to build a duplex will take the family compound. The rest will make do with our other lands," he maintained. "Papa, as you wish," Ndabizi told him with a wide smile. "Let it be as you want it," Okachukwu, who was much younger than Amanze and Ndabizi, had concurred. Amanze had kept quiet, his eyes dimming with resentment. When this happened, Amanze was 45 years old, married with 3 children. Ndabizi was 40 years old, married with 2 kids. And Okachukwu was 30 years old. Ichi Yuzokwi, first wife, Yuzunma, tried to dissuade her husband, but the man was adamant in his decision. From then on, there was increased rivalry between Amanze and Ndabizi. But Ndabizi was already faring far better because his business of being a drinks distributor for big breweries set him at an advantage than Amanze, who was a local welder in the village. 5 years after Ichi Yuzokwi made the pronouncement, Ndabizi was ready to build a duplex, and he informed their father, Ichi Yuzokwi. Ichi Yuzokwi was happy and gladly handed the family compound to his second son, Ndabizi. Subsequently, Amanze packed out of the family compound, renting a house in the village for his mother and family. He was hurt within himself because their father had given his birthright to his younger half-brother. Before long, Ndabizi began to build a duplex on a part of the land. But before he could finish the house, their father died. He was buried in the compound. After their father's burial, the 2 arms of the family became enemies. Quarrels emanated over sharing the other lands their father left behind. Ndabizi, with his financial influence, wanted a particular land to be given to his brother, Okachukwu. Amanze refused, and that became a huge bone of contention. Ndabizi bribed notable elders in the clan, and they sided for him and his brother. At a point, Amanze left the pursuit of the land, taking a less strategic land. He later built his house there. Now, 17 years after their father made that pronouncement, there was still animosity between the 2 families. That night, Oluchi and a few of her friends that would do a shubi for her, a traditional bridal train, talked and laughed in her room. "Your house is really beautiful, Posh," one of her friends, Doris, told her appreciatively. "Thank you," Oluchi smiled. "My dad upgraded and renovated our house last year," she told them. "And we literally changed the furnishings to meet with present tastes." "I think your dad also owns your house in the city," curiously, another of her friends, Nkechi, asked. Oluchi nodded agreeably. "Yes, our house in the city belongs to us too." "That's nice," Nkechi said. "That's what my parents are working on too, to be landlords in the city." They laughed softly. The next day, the sun was up in the sky and the atmosphere was clear and inviting. The May weather was good. Canopies had been set up and decorations were underway. The bride of the day was the main focus. Oluchi's mother made sure her attire for each outing was spick and span. The makeup artist was already fulfilling her task. By 12 noon, guests had started arriving and the canopies were getting filled up. And the groom with his family had arrived. By 1 o'clock, the traditional wedding started. The M.C. cracked jokes and the bride danced with her Ashubi girls. Then, Oluchi gave her fiancé a gourd of wine to drink, showing both had agreed to become man and wife. After that, the band started a joyous track and people danced. Soon, refreshments were served. Guests from the city, Ndabizi's friends and colleagues and Teresa's school colleagues, as she was a teacher, danced with the bride and groom, paying them money. Indeed, the day went smoothly and the villagers ate to their fill. None could complain of not having eaten anything. Oluchi's mother had ensured that all canopies were served with enough food: jollof rice, fried rice, pepper soup, fufu and egusi soup, as well as abacha, that is, African salad made of tapioca, local sauce and pomo. Although the traditional wedding had been done, Oluchi didn't go with her husband and his family. He would come the next day to pick her up. She would still spend the night in her father's house. That was how her parents wanted it. So it was with laughter and tears, and kisses that Oluchi bade her husband Kingsley good night. "I'll come early tomorrow to pick you up," Kingsley told her, kissing her lightly on the lips as they hugged. "Okay," she agreed with a purr. Eventually, Kingsley and his family left Ndabizi's compound. This was around 6:30 p.m. Everyone was satisfied. Oluchi hugged her parents and siblings, thanking them for all their support. She also hugged her uncle's wife, Okachukwu's wife Noni, who had sprayed them a lot of money during the dance sessions. "I'm happy we came down for your wedding," Noni told her with warmth. The caterers had already left as they had finished their work. Some of Oluchi's friends stayed behind. They would leave the next day. Most of their friends from the city left earlier because of the long distance back to their stations. However, a few of her friends stayed behind. The night was beautiful, with bright stars in the dark sky. The remaining guests stayed in clusters chatting away the night. At last, it was time to go to bed. Ndabizi and his family retired for the night. His brother Okachukwu and his wife stayed in one of the rooms upstairs. Oluchi's guests and some relatives slept in the 2 guest rooms and in the living room. She, her friend Doris, and her sisters shared one room. In fact, all the rooms in the duplex were occupied. The rest of the guests and relatives who couldn't find a space in the house slept outside in the canopies, trying to be comfortable on chairs and benches. They didn't mind. It wouldn't take time and dawn would arrive soonest. Around 1 o'clock in the morning, when almost everyone was fast asleep, only a few were still awake, something heavy struck the roof of the duplex. That was when the problem started. Screams were heard from different quarters of the bungalows, then heavy groans and shouts. "My heart," a voice yelled in pain. "My leg," another groaned aloud. What was that sound? Oluchi asked, half sleepily. Then she heard her sisters groaning in pain, and one of her friends started shouting the name of God, praying. Quickly, she scrambled to her feet and switched on the light. What she saw pierced her heart and a scream escaped her lungs. "God!" One of her sisters, Chika, was frothing in the mouth, the other having spasms, and her friend, Doris, clasping her chest, muttering prayers. She screamed again in horror, rushing to Chika. "Chika, Chika, Chika," she held her, trying to raise her head. "Mummy! Daddy!" Her voice rang out through the house. By this time, pandemonium had broken loose. Ndabizi and his wife ran out of their bedroom in shock. The screams from the different angles of the building had woken them up. "What is happening?" Oluchi's mother whimpered as she opened the first room. Some of their guests were lifeless on the floor, some were writhing on the bed. "Jesus Christ," Teresa gasped, staggering as a wave of dizziness overcame her. It so happened that out of the 21 people who slept in the house, 8 were dead in a blink of an eye, including Oluchi's sister, Chika, their uncle's wife, Noni, and her baby. Okachukwu was unconscious but still breathing. 3 guests and 2 other relatives were also among the dead. It was like a scene from a horror film. Ndabizi, his wife Teresa, Oluchi, their son, Chimazi, their other daughter, Jane, and 3 other relatives were alive without any injury or impact. The other 4, including Okachukwu, were unconscious. Oluchi's friend, Doris, who had been praying, was now unconscious, looking dead. But her pulse was still running. The shock was too much. While Teresa wailed, Oluchi clasped her head, screaming. Ndabizi and his son were making calls to alert their extended relatives and friends of the situation on ground. Oluchi later grabbed her phone and with gasps dialed her husband's number. "Honey," Kingsley called sleepily. What's up? Kingsley, Kingsley, come to our house, abomination has happened. Oluchi gasped, breathing heavily, as her chest tightened. What? What happened? Kingsley was wide awake now, his eyes almost popping out. The line went dead. Kingsley jumped out of the bed, yanking the door open. Those sleeping outside in Ndebezi's compound woke up to the cries, shocked and confused. Only one or two persons sleeping outside testified that they heard an object hit the roof of the duplex and shortly after, heard screams. None of the people who slept outside were touched or affected by whatever happened that early morning. Soon all the victims were taken to the hospital and people began to troop to the compound to find out more about what happened. This cannot be an ordinary stuff, something spiritual must have happened here, one man said, gnashing his teeth. Of course, this is clearly a scene of juju, another concurred. Unfortunately, Okechukwo's wife, Noni and their baby were confirmed dead at the hospital and so were the other 6 including Chika. Okechukwu and the other unconscious victims were placed in the ICU sustaining them with oxygen. Che, 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 Ndebezi wailed, clasping his head in misery. What am I going to do? What will I tell their family? Che. Chika, my daughter. Che. The shock of the night was too much for Teresa, she was placed under care in the hospital. She couldn't stop crying and wailing. The doctor had to give her a tranquilizer so she could sleep. Within a few hours, the news had spread the whole village and beyond. Their friends in the different cities were shocked to hear what happened. The families of the deceased were thrown into mourning. Meanwhile, Amonze and his mother were awake throughout the night as the whole horror unfolded. Now, they can have a taste of the pudding they have been serving us, Uzunma said with a heavy nod. The witch doctor carried out the operation smoothly. Can you hear their screams? Amonze concurred, breaking into a laugh. They both laughed raucously. By morning, the Ndebezi compound that was previously filled with joy and laughter was now a place of sorrow and deep mourning. Amonze and his mother stayed on the balcony of their house, watching as people trooped to Ndebezi's compound. They showed no interest and waved greetings to people from the balcony. Some people suspected them of having a hand in what happened. Ndebezi did not keep calm. He and Kingsley went all out to seek a solution to the problem. 2 of those unconscious had recovered consciousness but they were in a paralyzed state and could not talk. They had lost their speech and mobility. 2 days later, they went to a spiritual medium to find out what really happened. There it was revealed that Uzunma, his father's first wife, was responsible for the calamity. She had invoked an evil spirit to attack Ndebezi's household at a time they were having joy. Ndebezi was incensed and vowed to retaliate. Sir, the most important thing now is to reverse whatever they did so those unconscious and those paralyzed will recover quickly. Then you can plan your next move, Kingsley told him. Within 24 hours, Kingsley paid a heavy sum of money required by the medium to reverse the attack through alchemy. Within 48 hours after the reversal, Okechukwu, Doris and the others recovered consciousness and were able to move their body. Those paralyzed recovered and could speak again. Their families took them home immediately. Okechukwu was dazed and could hardly comprehend that his wife Noni and their baby were gone. The whole experience was one that shook and traumatized all involved and those who heard the story kept snapping their fingers in shock. Ndebezi went from joy to sorrow, from wedding to burials. He vowed not to let go. For him, a new war had started. But his wife had a different opinion. She believed that the 2 families may wipe themselves out through vendetta. But will Ndebezi listen? Oluchi was not going to recover easily from the pang of the tragedy. It would take a long time to get over the trauma. Her husband, Kingsley, did his utmost to help her get over the shock. Many people became scared of stepping into their compound for fear of whatever that struck those people that fateful night. While this story sounds bizarre, it is believed to have happened somewhere in Nigeria. What do you think? Tell us your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for watching.